What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheap Pop Society. And I know you're saying, now, Tarav, where are them other two? Well, let me answer that. First, Evie has decided she's got a lot on her plate with work and everything. So, at least for right now, she's going to be taking a break from the podcast, and we wish her the best of luck in everything that she's doing. And the door is open for you to make your return. Thank you so much. I know you're going to continue to support, as you said, but thank you for everything that you've done up to this point. You're very much appreciated, and good luck in all the stuff that you will be, I'm sure, kicking ass with in the future. Also, Grandma is unavailable for this week. I just happened to be that both of them are out right now. So Grandma will be back next week, and I will let him fill you guys in with whatever he wants to fill you in with. But we are going to continue. So again, a little bit different. So you're going to be stuck with me, but that's going to maybe make this a little bit, I guess, interesting. Hopefully you can hang in there until the end. But again, welcome to the Cheap Pop Society. If this is your first time, make sure you like and subscribe as well. But today we're going to talk about, I think this is interesting. It's a topic that I love, and I'm going to say that I would like to have Grandma on here talking about this some other time in the future, but we're going to talk about why wrestling promos used to feel more real than what they do today. So if we hop on our Wayback Machines and we're going to watch interviews from guys like, let's say, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, even Mick Foley, of course, The Rock and Stone Cold. There's just something that's different about them than what we see in today. They don't feel like actors that are reading lines. They feel like people that believed what they were saying. Felt like we were getting deep down in their hearts what they. Meanwhile, today a lot of promos feel rehearsed. So what changed? Well, it's pretty simple. We're going to break it into 5 different things that changed. So that's what we're going to be working through today. 5 reasons wrestling promos used to feel more real than what they do now. So, of course, we're going to start with number 1, and that is that wrestlers used to write their own promos? What are we talking about here? All right. First reason promos used to feel real was simple. The wrestlers were the ones that were talking. They didn't get handed scripts, right? Back in the territory days and even in the 90s and even into the 2000s for a little bit, wrestlers, again, they weren't handed what they were going to say. They were just given a direction. The promoter would say something like, you're wrestling this guy on Saturday night, sell the match. And that was it. Then that would be when someone like Dusty Rhodes would walk out there and deliver one of the most passionate promos that you've ever heard because he wasn't memorizing lines. He was talking from instinct. Same with Ric Flair. Ric Flair could talk about being the world champion for 10 minutes and it felt completely natural because it was his personality turned all the way up to 100. Today, a lot of wrestlers are handed scripts written by creative teams, and the problem with that is that when everyone is reading dialogue written by somebody else, it starts to sound like a TV show instead of a fight. Right? So you're really watching somebody that's struggling, not struggling, but somebody that's memorizing lines more than speaking from the heart. And that can be a little off-putting potentially. Number 2, our second reason is right here on the bottom of the screen, and that is that promos were about selling a fight. Right? Another huge difference, of course, is because that's what they were actually trying to accomplish. Old school promos had one goal: sell tickets, right? Wrestling didn't have all these sponsorships, right? Where they get billions of dollars just based off of the sponsorship, but also wrestling like WrestleMania coming to your city, right? Purchasing the right for one of these pay-per-views or PLEs, sorry, to come to your city, right? That was not always a thing. But anyway, promoters wanted fans to believe that 2 guys genuinely hated each other. And that's why interviews were so intense. When Jake the Snake Roberts, for example, would talk, he would lower his level. He would look you in the eyes into the camera, and he would talk low so that you had to lean in and figure out what was going on. Randy Savage cut a promo It felt explosive. Yeah. The focus wasn't on catchphrases, even though I just gave a catchphrase, or comedy segments. It was about convincing the audience that a fight was coming, and obviously you didn't want to miss it, right? Talk them into the seats. That was what it was all about. Today, sometimes promos feel like they're more designed as entertainment segments rather than selling a grudge. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is different. Biggest thing that comes to mind from a recent example, Cody Rhodes and I'm sorry, CM Punk and Roman Reigns, they talked me into wanting to see that. I was kind of like, "Oh, okay, that would be a good match." But once they started talking, they sold it. They put this butt in the seat, right? Figuratively speaking, of course. But that would be a present example because I don't think that either one of them get much more than direction on what they are to say. I can't imagine them getting full scripts. I might be wrong, but I just don't see that as being the thing. All right, guys, the third thing, come right down here. Kayfabe was still alive, and of course, we talked about kayfabe before and what kayfabe is, right? Remember back when it was the wrestling word of the week. That's just living the story, right? Whatever's going on within your storyline isn't just something that you focus on during the show, you live it, right? So for decades, like we talked about before, wrestlers protected the illusion that everything was real. If two wrestlers were feuding, they didn't break character in the interviews, they didn't joke about it online, they didn't post selfies together on social media. Fans believed the rivalries. So when the wrestler cut a promo, it felt like you were hearing somebody speak the truth, how they really, really felt about the other person or other people or, who be it. By the time we got into the late 90s and early 2000s, that's when kayfabe slowly started to fade away as behind the scenes information became easier to find. And with the advent of the internet, right, things started being being able to be seen, right, pictures from behind the scenes, all that kind of stuff. Uh, fans learned about booking decisions, backstage politics, scripted promos, all that kind of stuff. So again, kayfabe just slowly corroded away into what it is today. Once the curtain was pulled back, sorry, that's when promos, of course, started to feel less like confrontations and more like performances. And to the point that today you have fans saying, "Oh well, he doesn't have the promo skill." Right? You wouldn't have fans saying that back in the day, mainly because they didn't understand what the total package of a superstar really was. They didn't understand that this is what you need, right? There was no talk about being the best promo. Nothing like that really existed. Our fourth thing, getting through this pretty quickly, but our number four right down here, larger than life personalities. So another reason the promos felt real is because wrestling used to be filled with them being huge personalities. So think about some of the best talkers ever. The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Roddy Piper, Ric Flair. These weren't just athletes, they were characters that felt completely authentic. When Austin said he was going to whip somebody's ass, you believed it. When Piper ranted about his opponent, it sounded like pure chaos. The difference in those personalities weren't trying to sound like wrestlers. That's the difference. They were they were just being themselves, exaggerated for television. Today, some wrestlers are still incredible promos, but sometimes the system makes everyone sound a little too polished. And when everyone talks the same way, you lose some of that authenticity. Nobody delivered quite like Steve Austin. Nobody definitely delivered quite like Roddy Piper. So when you have these larger than life personalities, just the aura that The Rock gave off, right? The charisma, he was dripping charisma, still is. Those were all the things. Of course, that's why they reached the level that they did, but that was still part of what made it feel a little bit more real. Our last thing, number 5, right down there. You can see promos used to be unpredictable. The final reason that promos felt real is that, right? Anything could happen. You got that feeling. Sometimes wrestlers would go off script, their script, right? Their direction, their prompt. Sometimes they said something that might be controversial because it wasn't told to them exactly what they had to say or what they could say. Sometimes the emotion got so intense it blurred the line between story and reality. Think about legendary moments like the famous promo for CM Punk, right? The pipe bomb promo. Promo felt real because it was real, essentially, right? All the stuff he was talking about, but outside in. Now, well, it was technically scripted, directed, depending on who you talk to. The pipe bomb exploded because it made you feel. Fans weren't sure what was scripted and what wasn't. We're still not completely sure what was scripted and what wasn't. That is why it worked. That is why it was real, right? Made us feel. It gave us our why. So again, shout out to Grandma as to you got to find your why. We got to talk about that every week. Anyway, the unpredictability is what makes wrestling magic. When promos feel dangerous, fans lean in. So why did promos used to feel more real? So it comes down to a few things. Wrestlers spoke in their own voice. Promos were about selling fights. Kayfabe protected the illusion. Personalities were bigger than life, and the promos felt unpredictable. Now, that doesn't mean the great promos don't exist today. They absolutely do. But the environment around wrestling has definitely changed. Nobody can argue that. Fans are smarter. Social media exposes everything, and the business operates more like a television production than it ever has before. But when you do get a promo that's great, that feels real, that is when wrestling reminds you of why you fell in love with it in the first place. But I want to hear from you. Do you think that wrestling promos used to feel more real, or is this just nostalgia talking to me? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow the Cheap Pop Society podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Appreciate you coming in. And I know last week we talked about we're going to get into factions. I wanted to make sure we waited for Grandma for that. So hopefully next week we will be started on our factions episodes. That's going to be about a month-long ride with factions. Then we're going to get into some WrestleMania talk. So until next time, keep chasing that cheap pop.